Hey YouTube, it's B. And are you looking to be a part of a community but don't want to put in all that effort to properly educate and assimilate yourself? Well, look no further, for this guide will turn you from an old, dingy poser to a fresh, new LARPer. For those who aren't aware, the term LARP is an acronym for Live Action Roleplay, which refers not only to a genre of games in which players physically portray characters, but also to an extensive community, different but not isolated from cosplayers. LARPing, while a previously niche hobby and community, has skyrocketed in fame, but for all the wrong reasons, the kind that misconstrue its concept and those passionate about it. This is because the term LARP, LARPing, and LARPer, and all the different iterations of it, have evolved into slang that calls out people who pose as liking a series, book, band, game, social movement, and so on that they've never or barely seen or participated in, just to be able to label themselves as part of the community. In turn, it can be seen as a new form of insult similar to poser or faker.
She's not a Christian!
She could be a Jew and believe in
It
God.
doesn't matter. She's tampering in ducks!
Y'all are using the word LARP wrong. It means live action role play. Instead of calling someone a LARPer because they're being performative, call them a poser. We already have a word for this.
Yo, did y'all want to watch the game later?
Bro, the LARP is insane.
When have you ever liked basketball?
Oh my gosh, I love this anime. Bro, quit LARPing.
I've never seen you watch an anime in your life, bro.
LARP. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of Nirvana, you know?
Name 5
What, are we
songs.
LARPing music now? Yo, a couple of us are hopping on the game later. Do you want to join?
LARPing video
The
games
LARP
is
is
actually
actually
suffocating me.
I've just been doing a lot of reading recently.
Bro, you read? Nah, you gotta be LARPing, bro.
Given this and the number of iterations for this kind of insult, it begs the question of our society's obsession with craving community and the niche while putting in the least amount of effort to actually belong, properly represent the people in the community, or understand and embody the ideologies they stand for. Besides the misrepresentation of the actual LARPing community, the widespread threat of this kind of parasitic relationship of those trying to shallowly establish a niche or style within communities, especially the alternative and marginalized ones, is more harmful than you'd expect. One of the most recent and extreme examples of this involves the fetishization and misrepresentation of the Goth subculture, thanks to certain content creators who have gone viral, such as those part of the Goth House. For example, they have been seen making blanket statements such as, fuck the system. And while the Goth subculture is, at its core, anti establishment, this kind of messaging is one that, if you are, in general, under the alternative umbrella, makes you wonder what system exactly are we talking about. It is these kinds of shallow statements that indicate to the rest of the world that you probably subscribe to Gothic ideologies, but make it glaringly clear to those who are actually part of the community how much you're posing to be. The damage that has been inflicted on an already misunderstood group of people has resulted in the sexualization of the so-called goth aesthetic, the watering down of what being goth means, and the erasure and general disregard for its history and culture.
We're gone!
We're gone!
Yay!
Yay!
We like Bathhouse and Sisters of Mercy.
And the politics and the system!
Yeah!
The system!
Girl, what system are we talking about? I'm afraid I'm missing something because these girls who claim that hate the system so much have been spreading harmful stereotypes on the God community that the same system they claim to hate imposes onto us. This whole God mommy thing, the fast food workers spitting on food and acting overly exaggerated and sexualized, skits involving old men, the white monster thing, that is just a disgusting joke that white boys started to relate with us, are just a bunch of stereotypes and goon bait. But if your entire page is dedicated to perpetuate those stereotypes for clout, then what the fuck is that hating the system all about? And it seems to me that these people are just saying this to get the God community to stop criticizing their flop, because recently many creators have started to call them out. It's almost mocking the way they go, oh, here's 2 God bands, and the most superficial political line I could have said, there's your own God community, stop criticizing me, when there's really no depth in these statements. God is not some hook for the algorithm you can use and LARP off. It's an identity, and either respect it or shut the fuck up about it, and whatever this God mommy dating show is, has to stop.
This kind of damaging outcome is not exclusive to the goth subculture, and is one that almost every community, especially those prolific online, is constantly afraid of. In turn, that is also why it seems everyone hates a LARPer, poser, and faker, as exemplified through shaming and gatekeeping culture. We can see this with the shaming of being performative. However, this too can be a double edged sword, as most of the time, rather than protecting a community from harmful individuals, it will only dissuade genuinely passionate people from participating and assimilating into a community. This, in turn, becomes a tool for more harm and hostility within the communities themselves, commonly depicted by the stereotype of men testing women to name songs by the band on the shirt they're wearing.
You're a funny looking thing, aren't you?
Don't, that's my grandma's.
Oh, it's my grandma's! I hate my grandma!
I love the way it feels to be a hater.
With everything evolving into an aesthetic you possess rather than a subculture, fandom, or community you're a part of, it starts revolving around the visual aspects, which best signal to the rest of the world what kind of person you might be. For example, no longer is it the punk movement, but the punk aesthetic, and no longer is it the goth subculture, but the goth aesthetic. This can be attributed to the rise of blank core trends on social media that minimize these comprehensive identities and ideologies into something easily shareable, mainly fashion styles, but also superficial interests and topics, as well as things from a specific culture that has gone mainstream. A perfect example of something from a culture that has gone mainstream is the brand Vivienne Westwood. The high end brand, iconic for its orb imagery and use of tartan patterns, is one that you can spot quite frequently nowadays. However, because it is at this point an accessible and somewhat mainstream luxury brand, not a lot of people are aware of its roots in the punk movement.
1971, Vivienne Westwood and her boyfriend at the time, Malcolm McLaurin, opened Let It Rock. At the beginning, they sold records and 50s memorabilia. They shifted into biker clothing and leatherwear, rebranding under the name Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die. Vivienne and Malcolm would start to produce their own t-shirts with intensely provocative images, which led to their prosecution under the 1959 Obscene Publications Act. And what was their response to this? Print more hardcore t-shirts. In 1974, the store was given its most iconic rebrand under the name Sex. The designs and the graphics confronted social and sexual issues at the time, most of which these designs I'm not even allowed to talk about on here or show you. It was also at the store where Malcolm McLaurin helped form the Sex Pistols. Originally named the Strand, they changed their name in partial promotion to Sex. Vivienne, alongside their new manager Malcolm, would go on to dress them in some of the most iconic punk looks of all time for their concert. In 1977, Sex reopens as Seditionaries, taking the zips and straps of fetish wear and bondage wear into fashion. Although she's been much criticized for bringing punk into fashion, Vivienne Westwood will forever be one of the most important and influential designers of all time.
To wear Vivienne Westwood is to be anti-government, or at least that's how it's supposed to be. It's like fashion and politics are always intertwined with each other to create subculture, and I think people often forget that. Many of the iconic designers and pieces we have today would not exist if it weren't for these political movements that were intertwined with them. For example, there is Raf Simons' Right, Right, Riot, and Vivienne Westwood, her iconic and endless activism, specifically her pieces such as the controversial anti-Nazi shirts, as well as her endless campaigns related to environmentalism. She is considered the queen of punk, and that's because her fashion is tied not just for aesthetic purposes, it's not just to look cool or interesting, it's to push against the norm, it's to challenge the status quo, and what that means is to challenge the government. The purpose of punk fashion and alternative fashion is not just for aesthetic purposes, but rather to make people uncomfortable. It's to signify a change in society that people want to see, and I think that stuff is often watered down on social media where people just want to wear the orb necklace or they just want to wear the cute little Nana corsets.
Outside of the brand's identity, the woman it was named after is one who was not afraid to call herself an activist, whose art was a form of rebellion, and whose creations defied the establishment and challenged tradition. Despite running a fashion brand, one of her primary ideologies is anti-consumerism and sustainable fashion, promoting the idea of buying less and instead choosing pieces you genuinely love. While she may have established her own community and aesthetic, the imagery of her work and brand is rarely attributed to the punk movement that she was very much a proud member of. While there is nothing necessarily wrong with resonating or being inspired by these blank core trends, they should be viewed as more of instruments for introduction to communities, subcultures, fandoms, etc., and the aesthetics related to them. Given this, we should not just stop at the appreciation for the visual aspect and adopt these styles to our fashion sense. We have to become more proactive in giving recognition to their origins. While it may seem that all of this is not that deep, frankly, the laziness and deliberate ignorance are what will eventually lead to further misconceptions and eventually the erasure of efforts a group of people contributed to society. Despite this, it is still important to acknowledge that people should enjoy the things they love the way they want to, as long as it is done respectfully and sincerely. I cannot deny that it can sometimes be intimidating to assimilate into a specific fandom despite loving the original text, or being able to proudly label myself as a participant of a social movement despite sharing the same ideologies. However, that self consciousness is what drives me to be responsible and inform myself before claiming to be a part of community or even try to represent it. As mentioned, this is a guide to effectively LARP, so here are some steps to do so. Step 1. Find a community, subculture, movement, fandom, etc. you are interested in or align with your passions. Step 2. Listen to how other people experience it and what it means to them. Step 3. Do your research on its history and culture, and in general, educate yourself and construct your own views of it. Step 4. Interact with members from the group or participate in discussions and conversations. Step 5. Try to expand your interests and mindfully consume content and media surrounding it. Step 6. Assimilate yourself into the community and learn how to represent its people and principles. And finally, Step 7. Form your own opinion as influenced by your experiences and feelings, rather than regurgitating the same sentiments to hopefully be accepted by the community. At the end of the day, most communities will welcome people with open arms, as long as you genuinely show passion and respect for what it stands for. Similar to cultural appropriation, disrespecting a community by adopting its elements and ideologies without proper acknowledgement or understanding can and will be seen as exploitative. In turn, we cannot blame individuals from those communities for taking measures to protect what matters to them. However, there is no doubt that this can and has become a form of elitism and exclusionary behavior. All of this has evolved into a frustrating cycle that does nothing but continue to push an anti intellectualism agenda around educating yourself about the communities you want to be a part of, and maintain a gatekeeping culture that prevents communities from further evolving. I mainly wanted to discuss this topic because I am someone who jokes about being specifically a poser to actual media I love and respect. While this does come from that previously mentioned self consciousness of not being accepted, I have also been on the receiving end of being frustrated with LARPers in the communities I'm a part of. Namely, I saw a quite popular video teaching people how to be an effective LARPer for Resident Evil, a franchise I've adored since childhood and a fandom I am a proud member of.
Ranking the hardest games to LARP. The Resident Evil series is actually quite a difficult game to LARP because of how much it evolves throughout the last couple of decades. If somebody asks for your favorite game, immediately reply with Resident Evil 4. Mention how much it revolutionized third-person action games and how over the top the whole game is. If somebody says Resident Evil 1 or 2, say that these games are actually quite good, but later installments in the franchise actually improve upon the mechanics that they make. If they say Resident Evil 3, say how overrated Nemesis is. If they say Resident Evil 5 or 6, they're lying. Nobody's favorite game is Resident Evil 5 or 6. If they say Resident Evil 7 or 8, call them a new gen and say that they will never be able to truly appreciate the games before them. If somebody asks for your favorite antagonist, mention Albert Wesker and say how over the top and melodramatic he also is, and nobody will disagree with you. Don't forget to mention that scene where Chris Redfield punches a boulder in Resident Evil 5. Start salivating over these two characters. One is Ada Wong, but the person you need to truly glaze is Hunk. And for extra brownie points, if you have nothing else to say, just say, "Where's everybody going? Bingo?"
However, I do acknowledge that this video is probably satire given the tone, but that doesn't mean it didn't frustrate me still, so yeah, call me rage baited. Anyways, what really frustrated me is that what the video was basically teaching was just to regurgitate the same popular sentiments. What this does is prevent the growth and development of a community by dismissing discussions and erasing the diverse opinions and arguments of other people. In turn, these individuals with differing beliefs who have established their place will eventually end up being excluded by their own community. For example, because of how popular it is to specifically hate on the sixth game in the main Resident Evil franchise, I, who has very fond memories playing it when I was younger, and it being one of the first games that made me really fall in love with the series, feel like an outcast in a community I love. On the other hand, a different example is how it frustrates me that because of how popular the brand Vivienne Westwood has become, so many people who purchase its products don't embody or even acknowledge the sentiments of the founder with regards to sustainable fashion and consumption. Alongside this, it saddens me that either not a lot of people know or just don't care about the brand's roots in the punk movement. This is because while ideally, the rise in popularity of the brand will aid in pushing forward anti-establishment ideology, it instead fuels mindless overconsumption and the capitalism of art. Given this, by no means am I trying to gatekeep a luxury brand of all things. Instead, I'm actually hoping to call attention to the irony of people who judge and make fun of alternative people while rocking an icon synonymous with fighting the oppressive systems that marginalize people who are different.
It's so weird that VIP thinks they're so way too cool to do this.
Anyways, I wanted to conclude this video by thanking everybody who interacted, commented, and supported not only my first YouTube video, but also my TikToks and shorts. If you want to see more of me in short form content, here's my Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to see my actual essay about this topic and my other written works, please do check out my Substack. If you have something you want to add to this conversation, please do in the comments. I absolutely love reading your opinions and insights on the topics I discuss. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Quick spoiler alert, I'll be putting out a video soon about alternative fashion, so you should definitely subscribe so you don't miss it. Anyways, YouTube, I was B, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye! The damage that has been inflicted on an already misunderstood. Time for conclusion. Steps to effectively LARP. Yay! I was rage baited. Sue me. Yippee! I think that's good. I think we're done.